Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In late November, midwives, doulas, families and healthcare professionals marched in their thousands around the country. They powerfully set out their concerns about the issues they're facing, and 100,000 people signed a petition to ensure their voices are heard. It's both a privilege and a daunting prospect to be standing here trying to represent their views. Before I go on, I want to declare an interest because I'm pregnant myself, and while I was hoping that people thought I'd just eaten too much Christmas trifle, I realise that I am struggling to hide the bump now, and God willing there'll be a summer bundle of joy to give me additional sleepless nights over and above the normal MP ones. This also makes me a real-life current case study for maternity services with a literal skin, blood and placenta in the game. So far I'm one of the lucky ones. The service I received from Stroud and Gloucestershire midwifery teams during my first pregnancy is world class. It's also a testament to Gloucestershire's commitment to local expectant mothers. I didn't only receive consistent care during my first pregnancy, I've got the same midwife again. I thank them all and thank Jan Partridge in particular. Her name should be enshrined in Hansard as far as I'm concerned. She's not only a legend in my household but also for many others around my community. I know parents across the country feel the same about their own midwifery teams, and they help during literally one of the most frightening, painful but also special moments of lives. I stood on a manifesto promising to make the UK the best place in the world to give birth, with personal, high-quality support. I sincerely hope that we can make that a reality. The March with Midwives manifesto set out demands which include: listen. They seek an urgent consultation to understand the steps required to address the immediate crisis. Fund an immediate, appropriate, restorative pay rise for midwives and financial support for student midwives. Enable to make it possible for self-employed midwives to work, thus putting 250 experienced midwives immediately back into the workforce and provide flexibility. Reduce, provide a £5 million crisis fund to charitable organisations for the provision of breastfeeding support and antenatal education to reduce the pressure on midwifery staff. The manifesto is wide-ranging, but it does highlight a number of important concerns. But what I've found is, in all the briefings I've been sent and everything I've read, is many things often lead back to staffing levels. I will give way, thank you.
First of all, can I commend the Honourable Lady for Stroud for bringing this forward, and I think the number of MPs that are here tonight is an indication of the importance of that. The Royal College of Midwives annual survey concluded that over half of the midwives surveyed said they were considering leaving their job as a midwife, 50% saying they would leave the NHS the next year. Out of those that were leaving, 8 out of 10 said they were concerned with staffing levels, the very thing that the Honourable Lady has referred to, and were not satisfied with the quality of care they were delivering. So does the Honourable Lady agree that urgent action must be taken today to support those midwives considering leaving the NHS to ensure that they feel able to do their jobs to the very best of their ability, which is what the Honourable Lady is referring to?
Thank you. I thank the Honourable Member for Strangford for his intervention. I think staffing issues is absolutely crucial, and I've got a number of questions that I want to pose to the Minister in this speech today. Thank you. I'll give way because I know that my...
Thank you so much. It's just on the same point as the Honourable Gentleman made, staffing levels. Does my Honourable... I would like to congratulate her on securing this debate and on the forthcoming addition to her family. Does she agree that one of the most important reasons why we need to fill these staffing shortfalls, the 2,000 extra midwives that we need immediately, is because we need to be better at identifying higher risk pregnancies and continuity of care so that people are looked after by the same midwife throughout the prenatal, birthing and postnatal period is an incredibly effective way to do that?
I couldn't agree more with both members. I think the continuity of care, and I think we're going to hear more about that from other members, but certainly in the speech as well, it is the way to manage pregnancy, and it is how most midwives want to work. But that can only be achieved in many hospitals and many midwife teams if we have the staffing. And with the numbers that we are down at the moment, I do think this is a key issue to be addressed. And actually, it was when the... Yes, I will give way to my honourable friend.
I'm grateful to the Honourable Member for securing today's debate and also wish her well with her pregnancy. I've spoken to midwives in York, I've visited the maternity services, and many women find that they are diverted from York to other maternity services at the time of delivery, clearly very stressful for them because we just do not have adequate staffing. So does she not agree that we need to have a proper workforce plan to ensure that women have the safety they require through their pregnancy, but particularly at the time of birth as well?
Thank you for the intervention. I think what we'll hear from the government is that there is a plan for recruitment, but I think we need more details, and the Royal College of Midwives are certainly asking questions. I think my honourable friend from South West Surrey, he knows from the work he's done on the committee that when the Culture Secretary was the Maternity Services Minister last year, she's incredibly passionate about this area. She accepted that the NHS was short of equivalent of 1,932 full-time midwives, but since then, sadly, the number of midwives has fallen by a further 222, leaving the shortage to over 2,000. And since records began in 2009, the number of NHS midwives has fallen in England year on year. So we are in a really difficult situation at the moment. And to put this into perspective, there were 613,000 births, over 613,000 births in England and Wales in 2020, and the last count for midwives in 2021 there was 26,901 in England, but this drops to 22,301 if you're looking at part-time figures. So if you look at those birth rates and you look at the midwives, you can see just how stretched they are. The Association for Improvements in Maternity Services say that urgent action is certainly needed to shore up what seems to be a maternity service that is losing staff at a catastrophic rate. Over half of midwives surveyed by the Royal College of Midwives say that they were considering leaving their job, and I know a wonderful midwife called Stevie personally who's chosen to retire this year, and I wonder just how many midwives are making that choice. My own mother is a nurse and not a midwife, but she's choosing to retire as well. They've had a pretty tough 2 years in the NHS, as we know. But the most worrying feature of the RCM survey that the Honourable Member for Strange refers to is that the highest levels of dissatisfaction are among newer midwives, those who have spent fewer than 5 years or 5 years and less working with the NHS. So we have a pipeline problem, a new intake problem, and also a retention problem for our experienced staff.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will give way, thank you.
I'm grateful to her and congratulate her on getting this debate. It's so important. And also congratulate her on her part in looking at the best start for life for every baby, some work that we've done together over many months. And does she agree that the problem with midwives, but all early years workforce, has been exacerbated by the COVID lockdown, where far too many families have not been able to see their health workers face to face, and in particular, partners have very often been excluded from important issues such as scans and the birth itself?
I couldn't agree more, and I thank the Honourable Member for South Northamptonshire for everything that you've done for early years. I mean, if we think about the early years and the importance of giving the children the best start of life, midwives have their children in their hands at year zero. I mean, it could not be any earlier. And I think the pandemic world, I mean, I'll come on to a few more details of the reality of what midwives and NHS staff has faced, but that beginning of relationships and that fear when you haven't got your partners in the ward has just been absolutely awful. And I appeal to all ministers and all government to think very, very carefully when we're thinking about further COVID restrictions, if it is ever necessary in the future. But we know that the staffing shortage does not just affect midwives and staff, and hospital has a real impact on families and those families that are trying to bring new life into the world. Going to the Honourable Member of Strangeford again, 87% of RCM members say that they delay using the toilet due to lack of time, over 75% skip meals, and over half say that they feel dehydrated most or all of the time at work, no doubt while telling women to hydrate, but unable to do so themselves. Now, these professionals have lives of the most precious loved ones in their hands, and I ask you, is that really the conditions that we want them to be experiencing? Just to take a few points for actually, I've heard messages from midwives from all over the country. I received a letter from a former midwife last year saying that she was extremely concerned about the deepening crisis within maternity care. The midwife has handed in her notice. That's a loss of over 10 years of experience in clinical midwifery, and we cannot magic that experience back up to replace her overnight. She felt that she could not always provide the good, kind midwifery care that she was trained to give. She cited increasing paperwork, long hours, the inability to work hours that fitted around her families as key areas of concern. She began dreading every shift. Being required to work faster and faster and do more than was humanly possible meant fearing making a mistake that could lead to a tragic outcome. Another midwife wrote a blog entitled "How Do We Keep Going When There's Absolutely Nothing to Give?" The blog talks about midwifery being the celebration of new life. Midwives get to share the joy of families starting out, but they are struggling in a system that does not allow them to do what they dreamed of, what they trained for and worked so hard for. With no staff available, even in the pipeline, the midwife describes having to close facilities, reduce antenatal education, and postnatal visits are minimised. Another talks about trusts having to introduce incentive payments and selling back annual leave and employing agency staff, but even then staff are declining the extra work as they are so cream-crackered and feel constantly stressed. The money is just not going to get them over the line. Maternity staff are incredibly human, we're all human, but caring people that just want to do a good job. They tell me that they can recover from the physical strain of their jobs every day, but it's the mental anguish that is weighing heavier and heavier. And the mental strain is very real, as the problem and errors in maternity services can have devastating consequences. While outcomes for mothers and babies have improved in so many areas in the last 10 years, any loss is far too great. The families affected understandably cannot rest until they have the knowledge of what happened and they believe that it's not going to happen to any other families. My heart breaks for them, and I will struggle to tell their stories today without crying, if I'm honest. Birthrights is a UK charity that provides advice and information on legal rights, training doctors and midwives. The Ockenden Review is something that they've been looking at with maternity services, which took evidence, quite serious evidence, following the devastating loss at the Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital. And I know that the Health Select Committee have also investigated maternity. Approximately 59% of the value of new clinical negligence claims, about 4.2 billion quid, is attributed to poor maternity care. In 2021, maternal mortality rates were found to be much more higher, or more than 4 times higher, for black women, 2 times higher for mixed ethnicity women, and almost twice as high for Asian women. There is so much more we clearly need to learn and change. I know that this issue is close to the hearts of many across this House, and both the Prime Minister and the Leader of the House can boast a number of births between them, so they have experience here. But it's also the Minister on the bench today is an excellent person to be responding, given her own professional experience. The Government has made 2 important commitments. The first is to train 3,650 student midwives over 4 years, starting in 2019 and 20. The second is to employ an additional 1,200 midwives. This is obviously hugely welcome, but given the seriousness and the fact that we've got midwives taking to the streets, I'm asking the Minister today to give us an update on progress and explain the recent decline in the number of midwives. I would like to know... I will give way to my honourable friend.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and congratulate her not only on her pregnancy but on securing this debate. As the son of a community midwife myself, I know how hard our midwives work. The issues that she is outlining are not just about recruitment but retention as well. I wonder if she has any ideas as to how we tackle the retention issue too.
Thank you. I mean, we have, it would be interesting to hear from the Minister, we know that midwives have suggested, and some of the marchers have suggested, talking about financial payments, but there also needs to be a culture shift. So I've got some points here. If we're asking midwives to do things that they desperately want to do, like the continuity of care, but they don't have the staff teams to do that, then they will feel like they're failing, and you know, no money in the world is going to make that any better. So I think that constantly working together and those joined up thoughts to help that retention is really important, and I give credit to your mother, the member for Darlington over there. So into my questions, how many, to the Minister, how many midwives are currently in training and recruitment? We're interested to know why babies are not counted in the patient head count to determine staff ratios. What measures like flexible working are being considered to make the profession more attractive to those who have caring responsibilities or choosing a second career? Are we looking at salaries and financial support for students? The issues for midwives are actually incredibly complex, and as the member for Darlington says, it's not just about staff. It's not just one thing. Without proper administrative support to reduce their huge non-clinical workload, midwives are telling me they feel like they're drowning in their jobs. The Association for Improvements in Maternity Services talk about midwifery being a service that seems to be unable to support its own staff. It includes precious newly qualified members with frequent reports of bullying. I mean, that is incredibly worrying. In England, this cultural problem was a key focus of the Better Births report in 2016, and an issue that the ongoing maternity transformation programme has been working to address. The pandemic restrictions that the Honourable Member for South Northamptonshire references did cause huge problems for mothers and partners. The mothers are so scared now that these restrictions are going to come back in.
Grateful to my honourable friend from Stroud for giving way, and further to the intervention she's referencing from our right honourable friend from South Northamptonshire. I'm sure she'll be aware that my own NHS Trust, Sandwell and West Birmingham, actually, contrary to NHS guidance, actually stopped birthing partners being with expectant mothers. Now, we managed to get that decision overturned, but just to re-emphasise the point, I mean, does she not agree with me that birthing partners, and I think she's going on to say this in her contribution, form a really important partnership with midwives to ensure that the safety of expectant mothers is absolutely paramount in that delivery process, and I'm sure she'll expand on that in her comments.
And thank you, and I thank the Honourable Member for all of the campaigning that he's done, as with the Honourable Member for Rutland, who is not in the chamber this evening. It is absolutely right. The birthing partners not only form that immediate bond and that precious time with the baby, it's support for the mother, it's support for the team, and it's actually ability to spot what's going on. So if you are taking quite a lot of gas and air, you might need somebody else to have a couple of other conversations when you can't do that yourself. So I think it's really vital. We're making changes in schools, so we're not going to see restrictions and closures again. I think that if we're ever faced with needing to bring in COVID restrictions, we cannot do that in maternity services. And it's had a knock-on impact for midwives as well, because 7 out of 10 of the RCM members have experienced abuse about the visiting restrictions. No doubt from very worried and well-meaning people, but they've had that abuse, and it's no doubt contributing to the feelings that they want to leave their jobs. The campaign groups Pregnant and Screwed also did a lot of work with this surveying respondents, and 98% of the respondents said that there's a possibility of further COVID restrictions on maternity services is causing them anxiety, and there's enough to be anxious about when you are pregnant, Mr Deputy Speaker, without having to worry about that. Mothers also reported rushing their hospital care during the pandemic and seeking early discharge so they could get home to be with their partners, and as mentioned before by the Honourable Member for Surrey, the women-centred care is the ethos of midwifery, and continuity of care is a national recommendation. It's the right approach, but at no stage has the current staffing levels and the impact of COVID been taken into account to assess the viability of that new system. The vaccine mandate is my final point for the additional concerns. Potentially losing more staff is additional pressures in this pressure cooker effect. So finally, just to conclude, in Stroud we are hugely proud of the facilities we have. In the past, Stroud constituents have come together and fought to save the maternity unit. The fight was so strong, I don't think anyone would dare to try and close it down again. We've also recently instigated an important campaign to deal with the mental health and birth trauma. 25 to 40% of women view their birth as traumatic. I think I'm probably in there somewhere, and 1 in 4 women have experienced sexual sexual abuse. Such issues often have a huge impact on the fears for pregnancies and future births. So the campaign and dedicated mental health team that Gloucestershire is setting up is going to change the perceptions and conversations surrounding birth from the off. Our minor injuries unit across the road from the Stroud, Matt, is also receiving a welcome £2 million to refurbish it, and I've been up there for my scan recently at the hospital, and it's really buzzing. While I've raised some serious matters, I do not want expectant mums to be worried about the care that they will receive at Stroud or anywhere else, as professional maternity teams will look after you all. A midwife told me that they do not speak out because they're always trying to put women first in their charge, and they want to put them at ease, but unfortunately it's got to the point where they feel that they do need to speak out, and that's why they've got me here today. That said, despite the Minister responding tonight, the issues raised are clearly not just about the government. It's not just for the government to address. The NHS Trust, their HR teams, managers, all of us as patients in society need to think about how we behave, how we use the NHS and how we can improve it. Making the NHS a political football, claiming that more and more money is the only way to fix issues, or putting the NHS on a pedestal so there can be no criticism or open scrutiny will not help a single midwife in this great country. I believe in that men and women of our maternity services deserve better. They literally hold new life in their hands and all the hopes, dreams and responsibilities that come with that job. The final words to the midwife who told me that I love my job, I love supporting women and the team, but I too feel that maybe this is as far as I can go. I've never suffered with mental health concerns prior to last year. Anxiety has crept into my normally happy life due to work issues. I think that's quite a stark way to end this, and I genuinely think we can do better. I'm really looking forward to hearing from the Minister, who I know cares deeply about this, and I thank you for the time tonight.
We were at the motion and the Minister have agreed that Tyra Owatemi have a short contribution. Please give the Minister at least some time to sum up.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I will be very short. I'd like to start by thanking the member for Stroud for bringing forward this important debate, and I also wish her well with her pregnancy. We here in Parliament have been talking about the issues facing midwives' working conditions for quite a while now, and in fact it was discussed in the Health and Social Care Committee report on maternity health just last year, and as a member of the Health and Social Care Committee, I'm going to be very quick, and I have two simple points that I would like to speak on today. The first issue is with regards to the NHS staff shortages, which has affected many midwives in this country. As a member of the Health and Social Care Committee, we have been looking at staff shortages across the NHS for a while, and we published a report just last year which clearly shows the severe staff shortages and resource shortages that has been affecting the NHS, specifically midwives. According to the Royal College of Midwives, since 2019, 4,773 midwives have joined the register. The number of midwives working in the NHS in England has actually reduced. Full-time equivalent numbers have gone down by 125 midwives, but the demand for midwives has not decreased, and the supply of registered midwives has not decreased. But the number of midwives in the NHS has. And it is really important, and just hear from many members today, that it's important the government does more to ensure that fully certified midwives do get the much needed jobs and fill up the spaces within the NHS. And I would just like to quickly bring on to my second point, because I am aware of time. Due to the lack of resources and staff, the result is that midwives are suffering under terrible working conditions. The midwives across the country have been stating that they are not getting loo breaks, they do not have time to eat lunch, that they are working under minimal sleeping conditions, and this is really concerning, particularly because it can affect patient care. It is common sense that mothers and their babies in my constituency of Coventry North West will suffer if midwives are being overworked and under-resourced, and it's very vital that the government does as much as possible to ensure the midwives are not placed in this situation or in impossible working conditions. It is time that we ensure that we fix this burdensome circumstances and that the government do provide the resources for midwives. And finally, Mr Deputy Speaker, I would just like to end by thanking all the wonderful, hard-working midwives in Coventry and Warwickshire NHS Trust for all the work that they do despite the current working conditions. And I hope I've been very brief.
Thank you very much. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I start by just thanking my honourable friend, the member for Stroud, for securing this debate and wish her well with her vested interest and her pregnancy. And I'm sure her experience with her midwife, Jan Partridge, will be positive going forward. And I just want to thank all midwives and maternity teams up and down the country who for the last 18 months to 2 years have just gone above and beyond their duty. I visited maternity units myself and spoken to midwives and heard how difficult it has been, particularly with COVID, because it's a busy enough experience on a maternity ward anyway, and particularly the labour ward. But if there are women in there with COVID, with the added infection control measures and the extra pressures that brings, and with staffing, with staff isolating and being off sick, it has been an incredibly busy time. And many of the experiences my honourable friend raises, I have heard firsthand myself. And I want to say to midwives that I fully recognise the pressure that they're under, that there's not sometimes enough staff on the wards, that they are dealing with more complex cases, and I hate to use the term geriatric women, but we are seeing women who are becoming pregnant much later in life, and the risks and complications that brings. But we're also seeing babies born much earlier, and again the pressures and expertise and skills that a midwife brings to those situations means we all see the incredible work that they do. There are three areas really where I think we need to address, and I think the first one that's been raised in this debate is staff numbers, both by the Honourable Member for York Central, the Honourable Member for Coventry North West, and obviously my Honourable friend for Stroud. Can I reassure honourable members that we are trying to get on top of the staffing levels? Health Education England undertook a survey based on the Birth Rate Plus midwifery workforce planning tool to assess the gap between current midwives in post, current funded posts and recommended funded posts to try and bridge the gaps between the three. And following this, NHS England invested £95 million to support the recruitment of 1,200 more midwives and 100 more obstetricians, and to support multidisciplinary teamwork. There's also £450,000 on a new workforce planning tool at a local level, so maternity units can calculate their own staffing level requirements. We are increasingly trying to increase the numbers of midwives in practice. Returners, for example, are being encouraged to join the Health Education England programme, Return to Practice, where a payment of £5,000 is given to employers to support returners. Funding is given for the students both to pay for their fees, to pay for their NMC test of competence, and to stipend while they're learning. In terms of new students, the Honourable Lady is right. We have increased student number places to 3,650 student training places. We're also recruiting from overseas, and early this year we will see, and we're advertising and interviewing for between 300 and 500 overseas midwives to join the NHS in the next 12 months. And we're also recruiting extra maternity support workers to support the work of midwives. We're also trying to improve the environment and address a positive working culture, and £52 million has been brought in to accelerate the digital maternity programme, so the burdensome paperwork and paper records that midwives are having to work with will hopefully come to an end and improve the outcome for mums and babies as well by improving that documentation. There is so little time to express how much we're doing, but we're also trying to improve a positive working culture. It is not right that midwives are having to go without toilet breaks, going out without being able to drink in shifts. That's completely unacceptable, and it's a vicious circle. Because the working conditions are so tough at the moment, we are losing experienced midwives, and that makes a vicious circle of then trying to recruit and retain more even more difficult. So I want to say that the debate we've had this evening is just the start of the debate, and I want to work with members across the House to ensure that we support midwives as much as we can. We are serious about increasing staffing numbers. We're serious about improving the working environment for midwives, because that is how we improve the safety of maternity care. Thank you.